Imagine, you put your newborn baby, you tuck them into their crib, for the night, and finally you get a moment of peace. But then hours later, your teenage son is standing over you and a knife in his hand. He stabs you, not once, not twice, but over 40 times. It
Okay.
sounds like something out of a horror movie, right? But this actually happened. This chilling scenario became a terrifying reality. In Hialeah, Florida, back in October of 2023, we're diving into the case of 13-year-old Derek Rosa, a case full of unsettling twists and unanswered questions.
Yeah. What strikes me right away is that the 911 call, which is, one of our first sources, there's this jarring contrast. You have this horrific act of violence, but then on the other hand, you have Derek. He's almost attached, calmly describing what he's done.
It is truly eerie listening to that call. He's polite, he keeps calling the dispatcher ma'am, but then he just casually admits to murdering his mother.
Yeah.
And the details he can't recall, like his address. It just makes you wonder what was going on in his mind at that moment. Was it shock dissociation, or was it something more calculated?
Well, that's where the other sources start to paint a more complex picture. We learn about Derek's Google searches that he did before the murder. Things like carotid artery diagram, best place to stab someone even, can a knife cut through bone? These searches suggest a level of premeditation that's really hard to reconcile with that image of him being, confused and disoriented in that 911 call.
It's like those searches reveal this awareness of the human body and its vulnerabilities, a knowledge that's just disturbing in someone so young. And then the fact that he documented the crime scene, taking photos, videos, even a selfie with bloody hands.
And he sent those to an online friend, someone he had never even met in person. It raises so many questions. Like, was this a twisted cry for attention, a need to share what happened with someone, anyone? Or did he view these images as trophies, a way to relive and hold on to what he had done?
It adds another layer to this already perplexing puzzle of his mental state. Then you have the conflicting psychological evaluations. One expert suggested ADHD, focusing on impulsivity, while another expert leaned more towards autism, highlighting potential challenges with social interaction and communication.
And none of these evaluations can fully explain the premeditation, the documentation, the sharing of the images. We're left looking for a motive that makes sense of this horrific act. Was there something simmering beneath the surface, something that pushed him to this point?
Police looked into his background, but it all seemed normal. Good grades, no history of trouble, neighbors said good things about him. It's like this darkness came out of nowhere.
And that's what makes this case so unsettling. We have these puzzle pieces, the premeditation, the psychological evaluations, the seemingly normal background, but it doesn't quite fit together into a complete picture.
And then there's this other detail that came out later about Derek shouting a homophobic slur during the attack. It sparked debate with some experts saying it was meaningless teenage talk, while others saw it as a possible indicator of deeper prejudice.
Yeah. It's really tough to interpret that without understanding Derek's intent. Was it a genuine expression of homophobia? Or was it, as some have argued, a shocking but ultimately meaningless insult? A reflection of the sometimes toxic language that's common among certain teenagers? It's a question that lingers, adding another layer of complexity to an already perplexing case.
Yeah, it just, adds to that disturbing ambiguity surrounding this whole case.
Yeah.
But even with all these unanswered questions, the justice system has to move forward. And that brings up another layer of complexity, Derek's current reality. Despite being only 13 years old, he's being held in an adult facility, Metro West Detention Center.
That raises a whole host of ethical concerns, right? A 13-year-old, no matter what they did in an adult prison. It's just hard to imagine what that environment is doing to him. Absolutely. And the sources that, give us a little peek into what his life is like there. Like, he spends 23 hours a day in isolation, very limited contact with anyone. A prison official said that he was flourishing. It's so hard to believe that statement. Given what we know about his situation, can a child even truly thrive in that kind of environment?
It makes you wonder about, our approach to juvenile justice.
Hmm.
Are we really focused on rehabilitation, or are we just resorting to punishment, even when we're dealing with a kid?
That's a debate that goes way beyond this case. It forces us to ask some really tough questions about accountability, about the purpose of prison, and what it even means to be a child.
Then there's the fact that Derek hired Jose Baez, this big-time defense attorney known for representing Casey Anthony and other controversial clients.
Right.
Like, what kind of defense can you even put up in a case with so much evidence stacked against you?
Baez being involved just adds another layer of intrigue, right? Like, he went to the crime scene weeks after it happened, apparently taking measurements and really trying to understand, Derek's state of mind that night. It's not clear what his strategy is going to be, but it's likely going to challenge what we think we know about this case.
And to make things even more interesting, Derek has pleaded not guilty, even with all the evidence.
Right, which suggests that maybe Baez is going for reasonable doubt, possibly focusing on Derek's mental state or finding other things that might lessen his responsibility.
Which takes us back to those unanswered questions about his motive. What was he thinking in the hours and days leading up to all this? Was there anything that could explain why he did this?
I think that's what makes this case so captivating, but also so unsettling. We're looking for answers for some narrative that makes sense of it all, but the truth is still out there.
And the public's reaction to all this just adds another layer to it. All those people who think Derek is innocent, even with the confession and the evidence, it's mind-boggling.
It kind of shows you that as a society, we tend to look for easy answers, someone or something to blame, even when we're dealing with something that doesn't fit into neat categories.
Like people need to believe in a good guy and a bad guy to make sense of something so disturbing.
Maybe. Or maybe it shows that we're just uncomfortable with the idea that evil can be found in unexpected places, even in a child.
And that discomfort, I think, is at the heart of what makes this case so fascinating. We're dealing with the limits of what we can understand. That uncomfortable truth that sometimes there just aren't any easy answers.
And those unanswered questions, that feeling of unease, that's what sticks with you even after you've, really dug into cases like this.
We're left thinking about how complex people are, especially teenagers, and how our justice system struggles to balance holding people accountable with understanding that their minds are still developing.
Yeah, it really makes you think about, ourselves, the world we live in, and how much we really understand about the human mind. It does. And, we can analyze the evidence, we can look at the psychology, we can guess about what the lawyers might do. But in the end, some of this mystery is probably going to stay with us.
That's a really unsettling thought to come away with from this deep dive. The Derek Rosa case, it's not just about one crime. It's about our own fears about how complicated people are, especially when they're teenagers. It challenges everything we think we know about childhood, about right and wrong, and even about evil itself.
It reminds us that, even though knowledge can teach us a lot, there are some parts of the human mind that we may never fully understand.
So for you listening, what sticks with you the most? Do you see a troubled kid, maybe fighting some demons we don't know about, pushed to do something awful by things he couldn't control? Or do you see someone who knew exactly what he was doing, a killer who, even though he was young, knew what the consequences would be?
There's no easy answer. But just asking these questions, wrestling with these possibilities is what's important. It forces us to look at our own biases, our own beliefs, and accept that even in situations that seem black and white, there are a lot of gray areas.
The Derek Rosa case shows us how blurry the line can be between being a child and an adult, between being innocent and being guilty. It's a case that will stick with you, I think, long after this episode is over, and make you think about the darkness that people are capable of and the limits of what we can really know.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, we have more questions than answers. But maybe that's the whole point. Maybe the best thing we can take away from this isn't some neat conclusion, but a better understanding of how complex people are, how our justice system struggles, and the mysteries of the human mind that we may never solve.
Make sure you subscribe to The Deep Dive for more explorations into the world's most puzzling mysteries. We'll keep digging into the stories, the evidence, and the questions that make us rethink who we are and the world around us.